My name's Aunty Peggy Tidyman, and I identify as a Gunggari person. My traditional lands are in southwest Queensland, and that is between Roma, on the western side of Roma, eastern side of Charleville, down to St George, and then north to Carnarvon Gorge. The Gunggari people, we call ourselves river people. The river is the giver of life for our people. I was born in a small place called Mitchell. I grew up in Mitchell, and that is where I spent the first 15, 16 years of my life. But I still have cultural connections to my land, my country. So I was born in the early 50s, which was a difficult time for many Aboriginal people, living in smaller communities where we never lived inside the town boundaries. So we had to live outside, and it was a language name called Yamba. My early childhood memories are of growing up with a lot of my relatives, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, so my father's mother, who is a Gunggari descendant, who was able to share a lot of the Gunggari culture and language with me as I was growing up. What I remember is my grandmother teaching me language at night time when I was a child. And she would teach language at night time, and I often thought about it. Well, why is she teaching us at night time? Why can't she teach us that during the day? And it wasn't until later that I learned that, you know, there were restrictions around when we could learn about our language. Because in those days, if you were taught speaking language, you could be punished, taken away from your family. In those early days, it was very difficult. We had no running water, we had no electricity, and so living on the riverbank, that was our life source. So we knew how to hunt, we knew how to fish, and also I learned how to become a very strong swimmer because later, when we were allowed to join the swimming club in town at the swimming pool, I found that I was one of the best swimmers. So I still hold a title at the Mitchell swimming pool. My mother would have been my greatest supporter in school, even though she had a very difficult life, being part of the stolen generation. She was a very strong woman, and her desire to ensure that we had a good education was something that I appreciate today. Primary school was, it was positive, probably because I had lots of cousins there with me. Yeah, education had its challenges because we weren't allowed to learn about the things that we wanted to, about our culture, and then moving into high school, you know, it was going to year 10, so we only had year 10 at that time, but I've been able to fulfil my dream of getting a university education in later years, but I now work in education. When I work with young people in the schools, one of the first things that I share with them is around their cultural identity. Do you know who you are, where you come from? Who's your mob? And it's interesting because some of our young people can say, I know that because my family told me. Others will say, I really don't know. So I share with them that it's part of their journey, and that they go home and talk to family members and say, what can you tell me about my people? I'm actually sharing my knowledge and my cultural practices, and that's around protocols, cultural protocols. You have to acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land you're on, and that is something that we always do. So I explain to the young people that you have to acknowledge that you're on somebody else's land. And in a traditional practice, in traditional times, you would be listening to the sound of clap sticks. To hear if somebody was coming onto your land, they would let you know that we can hear the sound, someone is coming, and are they friendly or are they enemies? So they would be asking for permission to cross through their country, to go through for ceremony or something else. And how I explain it to young people is that we do that today. If we are going on to somebody else's land or we're going to visit somebody else, we still use the same sort of concept of letting the people know that we're coming, and we do that by using modern technology. So we have to call them on the phone to say, can I come and visit you? But when you get to the door, you still have to let them know that you're at the front door, so you make that sound of knock, knock, knock. So in a traditional practices, it was the sound of the clapsticks. Today, you still do the same thing. You have to knock on the door to let them know that you're there. I talk to young people about Facebook. Do you use Facebook? And 100% of them will say, yes, I use Facebook. I say, well, be very careful about Facebook, because we know that when you put something on Facebook, it stays there for a long time. So in our traditional practice, and this is how I develop a cultural framework, our traditional practices, our old people knew about that long before Google. They knew not to put anything on something because it would stay there for a long time. When you look at Aboriginal art, how long has it been there on rock? Thousands of years. So our people knew not to put something there if they didn't want somebody else to know about it. If they wanted somebody to know about it, it was put on the rock, onto rocks and other things, because they knew it would stay there for thousands of years. I'm very fortunate to have the cultural knowledge that I have, because I was born on country. I grew up on country. My grandmother taught me language. I know who my people are. So all of those are very significant to me and how I identify. As I said before, if I'm asked the question about, am I Aboriginal? I say I'm Gunggari, because the word Aboriginal is not part of our language.